Manatee Rescue. We're up to chapter 5. Granny Raffi was Silvio's mother. She had come to the Amazon to work in the hospital in Puerto Dorado for 6 months and had fallen in love with Silvio's father, Maurizio. He was a Ticuna, one of the tribe who had lived beside the Amazon forever, and she was a city girl. It'll never work, people said. But Raffi and Maurizio got along and got married, and Raffi never went home. She was the only trained nurse that San Lorenzo ever had, but she made Maurizio build them this house away from the village so that only people who were really sick would make the effort to come and see her. "I've had enough of every kid running to me with a bruised knee," she had said. When Maurizio drowned, Silvio had tried to get her to move back into the village, but she wouldn't. She loved the river and the jungle, she told him. She wasn't too sure about people. Raffi was bossy and tough, but with her on your side, you could win almost any battle. Although she was old, she was still spry and feisty, and when she saw the little dugout drawn up to her half-flooded jetty, she rushed out to meet her granddaughters, scolding them all the way up to the steps to her house. What were they doing out on the river at night? Didn't they know how dangerous it was? What would Silvio and Angelina have to say? Did they know how much trouble they would be in? Whatever were they doing with a half-dead manatee calf? Since she's moved out of San Lorenzo, Raffi had started to heal animals as well as people. Right now, there was a baby sloth with a bandage around one leg hanging over her veranda and a couple of macaw chicks in a hat on a table. Silvio said she was nicer to her animal patients than she was to her human ones. So the little girls weren't surprised when she cradled the manatee in her arms, calling him a poor little thing, while growling at them and bossing them out of their wet clothes. She fired questions like bullets until they told her the whole story of the capture and the kidnapping of the calf. Then Raffi ordered Libya and Tintico, the dog, straight to bed, as their skinny little bodies were shivering and they were both clearly exhausted. "At least you're a bit bigger and stronger," she told Manuela, "even though you are foolish enough to go out on the river in the dark. Now, let's see what we can do for this little calf." Raffi led Manuela into the room she used as her clinic and laid the manatee on the table there, cushioned by an old blanket. "You'll have to hold him while I clean the cut," she said. Manuela did her best, holding the manatee's tail under one hand and his body under the other. She noticed the gentleness with which Raffi's expert nurse fingers worked along the calf's wound with a pad soaked in disinfectant to clean it. The calf wiggled and made a little peeping sound. "Keep him still," Raffi barked. In the light, Manuela could see how bad the cut was. Even though it had happened hours ago, it still looked bad. The calf squeaked again, and Manuela winced in sympathy. "Huh! It's all very well feeling sorry for it now, Frog," Raffi exclaimed. "I bet you and Silvio were glad enough to harpoon it." There's a picture of her with her grandmother trying to fix the calf. It's cut. Manuela said nothing. Raffi was right. She had wanted to hunt manatees all of her life, but catching one had changed everything in a day. The calf's little sounds of pain felt like words of reproach. "Will he live, Granny Raffi?" she asked. Raffi looked up at her granddaughter, suddenly less gruff. "Perhaps, Gina," she said. Gina is like for girl. "But then what, eh? I don't think you know what you've started." Raffi gave the cut one last swipe. "There, that's the best I can do," she said. "Let's put him somewhere where he'll be more comfortable." Together, they dragged a plastic tank like a bath that Raffi washed clothes in onto the far end of the veranda. They filled it from one of the water tanks that caught the rain from the roof. Raffi added hot water from the stove because she said rainwater was a lot colder than the river, and the river water is what the calf is used to. Held down on the table, the calf had seemed very like a rather tired caterpillar. But when Manuela slipped him into the water, he became a manatee again. His nostrils closed and he submerged. Then he popped his nose back up with a little puff of breath. Raffi smiled. Maybe his chances are better than I thought. Raffi told Manuela that manatees, like many baby animals, could not drink cow's milk. They needed special milk powder that you could only get in Puerto Dorado. She had a little, she said, that she used for other young orphaned animals that could work. She put some in a baby's bottle and gave it to Manuela. Try to make it eat, she ordered. I'm going up the hill to see if I could get a signal on the phone so I can let Louis know you are here and that you are not drowned. Manuela nodded. Uncle Louis had a cell phone, and everyone in San Lorenzo used him as the village messenger. He often fished at night and got a clear signal out on the water. When Raffi had gone, Manuela sat alone in the dark, leaning against the side of the bath. She was very tired, but she knew she shouldn't fall asleep. Even if the baby recovered from the wound on his back, without food, he would die very soon. That night, sounds of frogs and insects and the high hunting calls of bats were all around her. Far off, the sky flashed pale with distant lightning and rain pattered on the tin roof. RUA was investigating his new home. It was a cramped space even for such a small calf. He could turn around, but only by scraping his tail on one side and his nose on the other. He did this twice and then came to a halt with his head near Manuela's end. She could hear his bristly nose whispering against the plastic. She slipped her hand into the water and began to touch the manatee's side with her fingers. At first he flinched a little, but he didn't move away. Slowly, she began to rub RUA's skin. She worked her hand along the folds of his chin and under his jaw. Gently, so gently, she eased his head upward with her other hand and lifted the bottle and pushed it into his mouth. His upper lip, strong and mobile like a hairy finger, felt it, investigating this new object. Manuela held her breath, hoping RUA would taste the milk and start to suck, but instead he spat out the unfamiliar bottle and turned his head away. Over and over, Manuela tried to persuade RUA to drink the milk, but each time he pulled away. Manuela learned a little bit more about the geography of his face and his mouth and how he moved as she watched. At last, she was able to push the bottle into his mouth and hold his chin with the other hand. He tried to twist away, but Manuela kept it in place just long enough for him to taste the milk. To her delight, he began to suck on the bottle. It's okay, she told him. Things won't always be as bad as today. You won't always live in a wash bowl. Just get well. One day, I'll put you back in the river. By the time the bottle was empty, Manuela could feel sleep taking over her. She lay down by the tank, too tired to find anywhere more comfortable. As her eyes closed, she wondered what Granny Raffi had meant when she said, "I don't think you know what you started." Chapter 6. At first light the next morning, Manuela began to find out. She opened her eyes and saw Silvio at the other end of the house, pacing up and down like a jaguar, stung by wasps, arguing with Raffi. Manuela decided to shut her eyes and stay still for a little while longer. Silvio didn't get angry very often, but when he did get angry, it seemed scary. "That manatee has to go back to Gomez," Silvio growled, banging his fist on the railing and making it jump. Raffi did not flinch. She went on feeding the baby macaws with banana mush from a spoon. "Why?" she said calmly. "Since when did anyone in my family do what that creep Jose Gomez tells them to do?" "Mama, you're impossible," Silvio's voice said. Raffi calmly answered him right back. "No, Silvio, you're impossible," she said. "Just look at that child. That's where she fell asleep last night. That's how much she cares about this creature. And you are going to reward her bravery and her determination with betrayal? And if it's not enough, she's growing up already without a mother." "Should I reward her for stealing then?" Silvio said, actually shouting now. "It is not my fault that my wife died," he said. "Well, it certainly is your fault. that you didn't get married again, Raffi replied calmly. There was a crash, and Manuela half opened one eye. Silvio had kicked Raffi's chair. That's it, he said. I'm leaving. Good, his mother said. But you aren't taking your daughter or the manatee with you. I just came for the manatee, Silvio snapped. Manuela heard his feet running down the steps. She kept her eyes shut until the growl of the outboard of the boat faded away. And there's a picture of them. There's her dad, and he's mad because he wants to get the money. He's supposed to be selling the calf. There's her grandmother. And she's way back there asleep. You can stop pretending to be asleep now, Raffi said, and feed your manatee. They're like human babies, and they need to be fed every few hours. You'll need to change its water and clean the cut with disinfectant again, too. Libya can help you. Come on, get to it, girls. Raffi stalked off to the kitchen, shaking her head. That's Silvio, she said with a sigh. Just as much of a hothead today as he was when he was 16. The manatee wouldn't come near the bottle when Libya offered it, but she didn't mind. You're the manatee mama, she told Manuela, not me. So she and Tintinko sat back and watched. Manuela held the calf's chin in one hand and the bottle in the other, and on her 5th attempt, the bottle went in and the calf began to suck. The level in the bottle fell and then stopped falling, and then the calf's charcoal eyes closed. He's fallen asleep, Libya said. My baby brother does that. Mama has to wake him up to keep feeding him. How does she do it? Asked Manuela. Libya giggled. She tickles his feet. Arue didn't have feet, only flippers, and these felt too hard to tickle. Then Manuela remembered the softness of his armpit. Everyone was ticklish there. Manuela put her hand into the water and tickled under the calf's right flipper. It worked. The calf woke up. She pushed the bottle back into his mouth, and the milk soon disappeared. Then the water needed to be changed, and Arue's cut had to be cleaned. It took them a while to figure out how to do this. First, they scooped out most of the water with a bucket. Then Manuela held him still while Libya cleaned his cut. Then Manuela lifted Arue out of the tank so Libya could pour out the last of the water, her skinny limbs shaking with the effort. Yuck, Libya said. The water stinks. How much pooping can one baby manatee do? Lots, Manuela laughed. We'll have to change his water twice a day at least, Raffi told me. Why so often? Libya asked. We have to keep his cut clean, Manuela replied. Anyway, you wouldn't go swimming in your own poop, would you, Libya? Well, we swim in the river, and that's full of poop from every village upstream, said Libya. Sometimes Libya said things that drove Manuela crazy because they were right and wrong at the same time. Manuela was about to say that the biggest river in the world was quite a lot larger than a bath, but Arue was squirming too much. She put him back in the tank, and together the girls refilled it, bucketful by bucketful, carefully mixing in warmer water from Raffi's stove. It had taken more than 2 hours to feed the calf, clean its wound, empty, and refill the tank. So when Raffi called them to come and eat breakfast, they were starved. Raffi's fish stews were delicious. The girls piled on farina to soak up the juices and dig in. When they finished eating, Raffi sat opposite them and looked hard into their faces, her eyes glinting like the sun on the water. So, girls, she said, what is your plan for this manatee calf? Libya just opened and closed her mouth like a fish, but Manuela said quietly, I promised his mama I would make him well and put him back in the river. And what do you think Jose Gomez is going to say to that? Raffi replied. Or your father, for that matter. Manuela looked down at her feet. It did sound silly when she said it aloud, but in her heart, she felt it was right. And where is your manatee going to live before it goes back to the river? Asked Raffi. He can't stay here. In my plastic wash tub. Maybe he could live in your old fish pond, Granny, Manuela suggested. Granny grunted. You'd have to clean that out first, but that's not the only problem. He'll need to be fed on milk for a month, and that costs money, a lot of money, and it also takes time. So you need a plan. Manuela studied the dirt between her toes. Even if you keep your promise, Rafi went on, and put him back in the river, what then? A fisherman could kill him a minute later. Manuela didn't have any answers. This was what Granny Rafi always did. Asked questions that made you realize you didn't know what you were doing. That's why she always made Silvio, and even Take It Easy, so angry. The buzz of an outboard motor down on the water signaled that Rafi was about to get her first patients of the day. I'll be busy all morning by the looks of things, girls, but you need to come up with a plan. And if you can't, I'm going to have to take that manatee calf to Gomez myself. Oh no. So chapter 7's coming up, but I'll stop there. They are sitting watching the manatee, and you can tell they look sad. Manuela's trying to figure out what can they do? What can their plan be? We'll soon find out.